Welcome, YouTubes, to another episode of Anime Mondays, where we'll be taking another look at episode 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. We got a lot of interesting stuff to cover today, so let's get to it. But before we do, let's not forget hit up the notification and the subscribe button down below, and definitely post those comments as well, and invite everybody else that you know. Without further ado, let's see what we got in episode 2 now.
So before we break down anything, what are your thoughts on the series so far? We're 2 episodes in.
I
Is this gonna be one of your favorite series, or is this gonna kind of go, midways, or is it gonna be kind of cold on your palate?
so far I find it to be pretty interesting so far. I think episode 2 I enjoyed a little bit more than episode 1, but I guess that's probably because they're explaining things a little bit more. But
Yep.
overall, I'm starting to like this. With this being my top 3, we'll see. We'll see. Time will tell. Even though that might be a hard feat for me, but but
I mean, it doesn't have to be your top three, but if
yeah,
it's up there at all, that's
yeah.
impressive.
But yeah, we'll see where it lands as a whole in terms of my favorites list as we get a little bit further in. But so far, I would definitely continue to watch. It's definitely piquing my interest. How about you?
So far, I episode one, it had a lot of promise. It had kind of very graphic, kind of dark art at time, and they didn't hold back. The cremation scene was also, it was kind of dark. Some of the imageries of the idea of a curse ravaging a human body, they were kind of Tokyo Ghoulish, and as we understand, Tokyo Ghoul was a horror anime initially, and even though it didn't necessarily relate well to the animation, the manga was just horrific. It was those some of those images were horrid but beautifully drawn, and I can see a lot of this from this series. So I'm excited to see that. Um, what did you think about the fight sequence at the very beginning between, I guess, Sakana, who was possessing Yuji, or our friend Itadori, versus Satoru?
I think it was pretty good. I think it was a nice length for an introductory fight, like 10 seconds long or so.
Of course,
And
even though that takes like 2 to 3 minutes.
yeah, it does, but what can you do with the anime? um, Overall, I thought it was pretty good because as I think, at least for me, it gave just enough of a fight to show that, all right, this dude is pretty strong. We know that it's probably not best to mess with him, and he's probably going to be one of those higher up fighters that we will probably get to see in some of the more intense or difficult fights later on in the anime.
So when I first see Satoru Goji, the first thing I think of is he is very Kakashi like, right? White spiky hair. He has a something covering his eyes, and we understand off the back that he's very OP to some extent. So I'm intrigued to see how powerful he actually may be, and we later understand that it was Satoru who more or less restrained him in episode one and told him that he would be sentenced to execution. And of course, we see that kind of come full circle in this episode.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see what Satoru's powers are kind of like, even though I know it's just a touch on the surface of it. He's
Yep.
this really quick and agile and mobile character that I think it'll be interesting to continue to see him fight from now on.
Yep. And also like Megumi, who was the first student of Jujutsu High that we saw with the black hair. Um, the fact that he's advocating for Itadori's life is pretty cool. He probably because Yuji Itadori was the one that just saved him, and he kind of feels indebted to him. So I'm sure we'll see a inspiring friendship between the two.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm guessing could very well be as friends, but it's definitely starting to look like they're probably going to be rivals.
of course.
It wouldn't be a shonen or an anime without the main protagonist having a rival of some sorts, huh?
Yep, and based off of the opening, I'm sure we're gonna see a female protagonist that's gonna be along with the other two duo that we see.
Yep.
Almost, you know, reminiscent of other shows in the past. So my question for you though is, what did you think about the interaction between Satoru and how he told Itadori more or less he gave him the option: you can either get executed now, or you can consume nine other of uh
19
Sakana's
others.
fingers, so and then you'll die. And the motivation behind that is uh they're powerful cursed objects that they don't really have the ability to get rid of themselves currently. And it seems like he's a vessel that can contain that power. So once he consumes it all, they can hopefully exorcise the demon and kill him. So, what are your thoughts? I did like how that played out to some extent because he is technically a danger, but they have a lot of motivation to keep him alive,
Yeah.
um,
So I think that's
and it's believable.
yeah, it's definitely unbelievable, and I think it works out for Itadori. Although it makes me think that later on down the road, Itadori might become valuable enough where they may reconsider the execution. That could be an option.
Or he might become too powerful.
Yep. So I guess time will tell to see if any of those options actually come to fruition.
What do you think about Itadori's ability to control Sukana and the transition and can let him take over for periods of time?
I think it's interesting how he's able to do that. I think it's going to be a mainstay of his powers. Although I'm not sure if they do that at all in the future, but I think it would have been even nicer if the first couple of episodes it was difficult for him to control Sukuna, and he kind of overcomes it through some means or another. That might have been cool.
I kind of I like the idea of as he continues to consume the different fingers, he's going to continue to grow in power. Again, very similar to the nine-tailed fox. But I do like the fact that we get interaction from the other force from the very beginning. And so in some ways, it kind of reminds me of Parasite. It's like Parasite meets Naruto. Um, at least that's how it feels at the moment.
Yep,
But we'll see where they go with it.
that's actually a pretty good correlation. I didn't think about it until just now, but it works.
Yep. But we see Itadori see his friend Sasaki, she's in the hospital, she's recovering, and Iguchi, who is completely like he's incapacitated, he's all bandaged up because you remember he almost got chowed down on by the curse last episode. But he seems very set in trying to do what he can to protect people from curses and to fulfill the dying wish of his grandfather. We see the cremation scene, and we see him more or less make the decision that he's going to go to the high school and learn to, you know, be I don't know what they're even called, a curse hunter. I don't know, a jujitsu user. Who knows?
Jujutsu sorcerer.
The jujitsu sorcerer. There we go. Thank you. And we also get to meet Masamichi Yaga.
Yep, the principal of this high school, which I kind of wasn't expecting to be exactly how he was like when I first met him, but I don't mind him at all. And as this big buff dude that pretty much channels his powers through dolls, pretty much to fight from him.
Stuffed animals, very violent stuffed animals.
So it's definitely interesting to see what more types of powers that this principal actually has. As I'm sure he was holding back some amount of his power.
I mean, yeah, clearly he was just kind of very hands-offish. He was just trying to push him to be as honest and open about his motivations. And more than anything, he feels special because he's the only one that can contain Sakana, or excuse me, Sukuna. I said Sakana. Sakana's a fish, but Sukuna, and that within itself, I guess, gives him a lot of pride in the fact that he can protect people and try to fulfill his grandfather's dying wish.
Yeah. So it's nice to see that motivation as well. He's really doing a lot of this to really take on his grandfather's wish and to protect others and to really die a noble death, if you would say so.
As noble as it may get.
Hmm.
And it's nice to know that he's at least getting the full school treatment. He's getting his quarters and everything. So that seems like he's gonna enjoy it.
Yeah. Uh,
And
Although his newfound friend might have some initial reservations of having a new next door neighbor.
I'm sure. But you can't win everything, right? You win some, you lose some.
Yep.
It's a part of the game.
Indeed. Indeed.
But I'm a little more intrigued now than I was at the, I guess, end of the first one to see where they're gonna go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and speaking of the end of the episode, we get to see another first year, or at least we think she's a first year, on the train. So,
oh, what was her name? I completely forgot. It was. I think it's Nobura Kugisaki or Kugisiki. Yep, Nobara Kugisaki. She seems to have a hammer or something. I don't know.
so it'll be interesting to see exactly what she's capable of, and I'm assuming we'll start to see more of her in the next episode.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued now. They got me. 12 episodes in. We got 22 to go.
Hmm. So
But
overall, it's a good episode. Keeps
yep,
me interested in wanting to watch more.
I'm more than ready to see what's coming up next.
Yeah. And with that, we'll catch y'all next week as we take a look at episode 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen. And until then, folks, keep your lives geeky.
Always.